Ross, I guess I'll just kind of bring you in. So for people that runs Nomad Strength Training, one of my former teammates, so we did track and field together in college, and you were one of the few that got out of school. We're like, yeah, unfortunately, I'm not getting a job ever. So I'm going to kind of figure out my own way.
That's actually pretty accurate. I don't know how that went. I did it for like 2 years and was like, nope, this is not for me. I am done working for anybody, really. And because I worked at that big box gym right out of college, after we graduated and moved up to Boise area and worked in like a Gold's type of gym, and did that for a couple years. And it was about 6 months after Molly and I got married, and I'm like, I could run this entire company better than anybody doing it right now. And whether or not that was actually true, that's what I believed. And so that was like my cue to peace out and start doing it my own way, I guess.
I appreciate the self-confidence. I mean,
or self-delusion.
That's a good place to start. Still the same result in the end.
Right, exactly.
So if that's where it falls, then that's where it falls. But so what about like the working for somebody else kind of rubbed you weird? So obviously you're like, hey, this seems like something I could potentially do by myself. Why? What stood out? It was like, yeah, I'm all good on, clocking in for the quote unquote man anymore.
Well, in the training world, it's really weird because big box gyms are usually run so much differently than like a boutique like studio that specializes in coaching, right? Because the goal of like a Gold's or the place that I was at was literally just to get as many $18 a month memberships as possible, assuming that 80% of those people were never going to go to the gym. Like, it was like, we don't care. Like, we don't even actually have the capacity if everybody decided they wanted to come to the gym anyways. So the goal is just to get as many signups and memberships that are like just cheap enough to where people kind of forget about them, that they go on forever. Right. It's kind of like the original subscription service that nobody actually is ever going to cancel Netflix, even though they raise it $1 a year until it becomes ridiculous. But it's just like, oh, it's just Netflix. I have to pay for it.
Well, it's like the Planet. That's like their entire MO. $10 a month. We'll get 5 million people to sign up that, best case scenario, nobody ever comes here.
And we'll give you pizza on Friday. So
yeah, God forbid somebody improves themselves head to toe. We prefer you actually didn't come in. Exactly. And that's kind of like how their structure is set up. So that's
exactly. And so when I was going through that, I was seeing that and seeing the super high turnover of the trainers that were there, because in those environments, actual trainers either quit because they found the quote unquote real job, or they leave to do their own thing, because it's not really, you can't really be a career trainer in a place like that, because you're immediately capped on earning potential based on the structure of the gym. And I had been there 12 months and had already maxed out my potential on what I was going to earn, because they did it based off of like certifications. And so like every certification I'd get an extra % of a session rate. Right. But they cap it at 5. And so after 5 certifications, I literally could not earn anymore unless I just trained more hours. And so I'm like, I was already training people anywhere from 90 to 110 hours a month, which like, that doesn't sound like a lot because it's, anywhere from 25 to 35 hours a week of training. But when you're actually on the floor coaching somebody, that is extremely draining mentally. And like, that's just a lot of one-to-one conversation and connection. And like, you got to be kind of switched on and ready to do that all day. And so it was just a lot. And I was like, I don't want to train more. Like, I'd rather do less and earn more of the session. Because at the time, like being capped out, I would get, I think at the time it was a base pay, and then you'd get percentage on top. And it was 27% of a session rate would actually go back to me. And the rest, the other 73 would go to the gym. And so I'm like, I am not going to do this forever anymore. And so when I had found the place, it was just like a little boutique garage or whatever. The gal that ran it is like, you can just pay me $300 a month and come and train as many people as you want. Charge them whatever you want. You can use all the equipment. I'll give you a key. You can come in, whatever. All you got to do is just essentially pay me rent. And it was $300 a month. I'm like, done. I left. I literally put in my notice like 3 days later with zero plan. And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to do, but I know I'm not going to be doing this anymore. And so when I left, I literally took like 4 clients with me. That's it. And I was making 20% more than I was training 20 clients because I was actually keeping all the money this time.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. So I'm like, okay, well, this is so much better. And then after that, it was like, never look back.
Yeah. So it's basically like a time management and an income adjustment simultaneously. Yep. So now you get more time back, which gives you time to bring in more clientele if that's,
Yep.
what the vision is.
Yep.
And this will kind of bring us into a second rabbit hole of like your schedule with your family, because let's not pretend like that's not important to pretty much almost everybody that's in some kind of independent contracting business owner world, having that balance of, I'd rather get what I get for, a half day here at a higher price because I'm worth more. Exactly. And now I get more time with, Molly and the kids, etc.
Yeah. And that was the nice thing that I realized pretty early on was and this was actually the big difference between training people in person and then making the jump to doing everything online, is now I now have even more control over that time. Cause even though I was on my own, I'm still working on everybody else's schedule when I'm coaching them in an in-person session. Right. So it's like, it's still the same hours. Like I'm still doing everybody before work and everybody after work. And then I have 7 hours in the middle of the day where I'm just like trying to figure out how to get more people in that small chunk of time. But it still did allow me to like set up days I wanted to work. I could take off when I needed to. We could have long weekends and this was for the most part before the kids showed up, because I went online right before, about 6 months before, 4 months after Riggs was born. So he was, right around that same time was when I transitioned to totally online, which again gave me even more control, because at that point it's like I can work basically 5 hours in the morning, go over everybody's workouts, like put out whatever marketing materials, social media posts, whatever, and learn how to condense and actually be way more effective and productive in a much shorter time frame than I was ever doing, like spotting all over the day, like 2 hours here, I got to train people, and then I got to do this forever, but then I got to go back to the gym in 3 hours to train 2 more people, and then I got to leave and have lunch, and then I got to go back to the gym in 3 hours and train 5 more people or whatever. So even more control over my time was the real benefit when I went online.
So you're not doing any in-person stuff anymore.
So it's actually funny that you say that, because like literally just in the last couple of weeks, and I still actually take that back. I have a couple of kids that I train on Saturday mornings. I used to train their dad for years, and he's got 2 boys that one's in high school and one's just out of high school. And I go out to their place and train them at their little home gym. I do that on Saturday mornings, just because I'm like, I'm good friends with the family and they want me to, stick around and train the boys and stuff. So up until these last couple of weeks, that was the only in-person stuff I've been doing for a couple of years. But actually we just put together a whole new space for our jiu-jitsu school. Like everybody's moving into a brand new facility, like 10,000 square feet. It's massive. And they're installing like a fitness area, and they're going to have a room that's got a sauna and a cold plunge and all this kind of stuff. And so I helped like organize and help them order all the kettlebells that they wanted me to pick out, all the sandbags, like the sled. And so I'm going to actually start doing here in a few weeks, 2 or 3 like kettlebell strength and conditioning classes for the jiu-jitsu school, like super minimal, but like, it'll be fun to just go back in and actually get some in person. Cause that, as a coach, like that refines your coach's eye more than anything, is seeing people in person. So it's kind of a skill that you got to keep sharp. And so it's been a while, and I'm like, yeah, let's do it. It'll be fun.
So when you are trying to think of the best way to ask you this question, because basically you're going to be moving back to, let's take a step back.
Yeah.
The simplicity of your workouts.
Yes.
I think that's what I loved about the program the most, right? Because when I first started working with you in our, post-collegiate, I mean, I talked to you, it seems like every couple of months, kind of on and off.
Assuming one of us answers the phone.
Yeah. Which could be a 6 to 8 week hiatus before a callback, but that's part of the deal. So that was important to me, because I was like, sometimes I'm in these closet, tiny hotel gyms, and I've got 20s and a 15-pound kettlebell, and if I'm lucky, a pull-up bar and a treadmill.
Yep.
So I'm like, I need to have some kind of program or some kind of, setup where I can just go and bully myself into the ground in the mornings, you know, to get the most out of whatever equipment I've got, which was hard for me at first because I like the big gym. I like the gyms because I like the different exercise and the different equipments.
Yeah.
And then I started, you know, that's why I kind of turned into like this avocado for like almost 2 years. Is I'm like, well, if I don't have time to do it, then I just don't have time to do it, you know. And if I can't get to the gym, use all the equipment, looks like I'm taking the day off, and that turned into almost 2 years. So why did you switch to the minimalist stuff and just go through that?
So when I made the switch to go online, one of the first things I realized was like, okay, well, I don't have a place to train myself anymore because I was working out at the gym that I was coaching at, right? So I was like, well, I got to figure something out. I don't really want to like be a member of another gym and drive all over town and do this kind of thing. So I'm like, I'm going to get stuff set up at the house. And we have like a little patio area back here and a shed that has since been like kind of turned into my little spot. But before it was just literally outside patio with like an overhang. And I'm like, what's the minimum amount of equipment I need to do the stuff I want to do? And at the time I was really into the kettlebells. I've been really involved in them for like 5 or 6 years and love how effective they are and how versatile they are as a training tool. Like, and most people only know them to use like really light swings and do some sort of a kettlebell swing that's actually like a shoulder raise for most people. Like most people don't realize how effective heavy kettlebells can be. And so I put in an order and I think it was like $600 something and got like a whole set of kettlebells that went up to like 70 something pounds or something like that, a couple of pairs, and had a pull-up bar. And at the time so this house that we're living in, it's like a small cottage style home. It's 2-bedroom, 1 bath. It's like 750 square feet, right? So like all these things were kind of happening at once. We bought this place. I move out of the gym and I'm trying to become like minimalist with the training. We don't have the space for me to do a bunch of stuff, right? Like all of my clothes fit into like 1-2 drawer side table on my bed. Like I was just we were downsizing everything. And so like that whole approach is like actually decluttering feels really nice. I have much more headspace to think throughout the day and work and like not worry about like quote unquote stuff. Right. And so like the training just kind of naturally followed suit. Like what's this minimum effective dose that I need to still get results training? And like, even what I had was more than what I realized I actually needed. Like I could get crazy results with myself and with other people with like 2 kettlebells. And like, that's all you had. Like that's more than you'd ever need. So it was starting to remove these barriers of, oh, well, I need to, I can't make it to my 30-minute drive across town to go to the gym to use $40,000 worth of equipment. So I must not get any kind of workout in today, right? I'm not going to, same thing literally you just said, right?
Yep.
And so, but if I tell you, it's like, dude, get 1 53-pound kettlebell and keep it at your house and you'll never need another piece of equipment again. You can get crazy workouts in and you won't ever get bored by them, because we can do all kinds of stuff with them. And that begins to remove a lot of those barriers for people of why they're not training. And then once you like start to get over those, it's just like when you're talking on sales calls, right? Like it's all these things like, well, I don't have time. It's like, well, you don't have to leave. So I just saved you 30 minutes driving to the gym and maybe 45 driving there and back. Right. So now you have literally almost a whole extra hour. So you do have time. And it's like, well, I don't have the equipment. Like, well, we only need one thing and it'll cost you $100 and you only have to buy it once. It's like, okay, well, now what? Like, what's my excuse now? I have no excuse now. And so it became.
What about I don't feel like it? How about that one?
Other than you just being lazy, there's no other excuse. Like that's the only reason why you wouldn't at that point. And so it became a lot more fun for me to be able to stick around here. And if I wanted to just like go out and spend 20 minutes doing swings and squats, I could. And I didn't have to be this whole production of me getting ready to go to the gym and drive 20 minutes and warm up and then work out and then drive 20 minutes back. And then it's like I'm saving 400% of the time that I would have. And so it all just kind of made sense living in this smaller home, like decluttering and kind of downsizing everything on purpose. It's like, I think I could probably do this with my training. And it just kind of exploded from there because a lot of people like yourself are looking for something like that, where it's like I'm traveling or whatever, or I don't have a ton at my house, but I don't want to go to the gym, or I'm traveling and they got like these, like you said, these closet gyms on the first floor that have like 7 things in them. Like, I don't know what to do if I don't have all this stuff. And so it kind of developed this little system. It's like, well, you don't actually need it. So it's been pretty nice for that.
Well, I noticed that I think trendy is disrespectful. I won't say trendy, but I've seen a lot of momentum pick up with minimalist, no excuse getting your exercise in every day. So, and you were, I mean, in my close warm market, you're obviously the first person that I ever saw do that. So it's cool to watch something that I'm just giving you 100% credit for the whole thing, by the way.
I created all
Ross
of it.
Started the entire thing, obviously.
The implement that's been around for 600 years. I'm taking credit for the use of it popularly now.
The kettlebell bat that you're always swinging around.
The mace. Yeah, those things are dope.
Obviously you invented that too. So
2,000 years ago in
progress.
2,000 years ago in India, I created that tool.
Oh, that's awesome. So one of the coolest things for me getting back into like a rhythm and I won't say sticking to the program because that's a bit of a stretch, but implementing some kind of daily mobility and movement and what that's done for like my morning mental clarity. And you've got to see this on mass scale because this is literally what you do all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've got anything you want to touch on with that piece, but what it did for me to be able to wake up and just like kill myself with a kettlebell, dude, if you have a 40-pound kettlebell and access to some kind of a pull-up machine, dude, you can destroy yourself.
Done. Yeah. You literally just crush it.
So if you want to talk about that a little bit, because I'm sure you've got to see story after story and just go into that a little about how important it's been and the cool impact that you've got of like witnessed from the mental aspect of training people.
Well, the cool thing is too, like, I'm sure you'll probably remember this because I've told this story when I go on other podcasts and even on mine a couple of times, but no one was ever actually there. And you were, so I can actually tell you this and you'll probably remember these stories. Like when we were in college and running and doing all these things, like the weight room part was always way more my jam than the stuff that we did on the track. Right. Like I mean, like you were obviously winning meets and going to nationals and doing all this kind of stuff all the time. I always say I was like the most average of NAIA college athletes. Like I was fast and I was fast enough to get there. And then like I'd win a couple meets if they were small and I could keep guys pushed in practice. But like I wasn't like the nationals guy or whatever. But the weight room stuff, I was like, that's where I'm at home. Right. Like I'm for my size, I was stronger than most of the guys that were like on the team. And like, I just loved the training aspect of it to see the results on what it would be like to build yourself up and then see the results on a track. Right. Cause I still was improving there. So this idea that, we can actually build and sculpt and create performance out of something in the gym. I'm like, that's so rad. And I got to see it with myself first. So like, I got to experience like, man, I actually got a lot stronger. And then I got like 3 seconds faster on this thing over here. And it was awesome. So like, I liked how that felt for me. I want to help other people do that. And even like in college, I don't know if you remember, like I was helping people do stuff in the weight room because we didn't have like a quote unquote strength coach at a small NAIA track team in the middle of Montana.
Oh, I recall.
Right. Like we had like the program and then we kind of like fended for ourselves when we're in there. So like I kind of took that on for some of the people that didn't really like had no weight room experience. I was kind of like in there just helping out and doing that kind of stuff. And so when I got to see that in that environment first and people like, oh, they understand what I'm saying, I actually can communicate this pretty well. It was really fun for me. And so it kind of became this natural transition out of it where seeing people, especially the people who have zero training experience and come in with nothing. And then within the span of a couple months, they feel confident in their movement. And they're like, actually, like I can do some of this stuff. And the mindset that gives somebody and watching it happen in real time is like killer. I'm much more into training those type of people than trying to train like the top 1% athletes where they're probably just there because they're freaks anyways. And anything I like at that level, what I do is stop them from getting hurt. Right. Like that's at the top highest level. I'm like not really like the 1% they're getting is because they're not blowing out knees. Right. It's not because I'm getting them a little fitter. Right. Or whatever. And so the gaps, like the newbie gains, like as we call it, right, from the very beginning person to like even just 6 months later, it's the coolest thing in the world to see. Like if they get this dialed in and they realize how good they feel, like they'll never go back because you realize how you actually, let me say it this way. You don't realize how crappy you always felt until you start feeling good. You know what I mean? And they're like, holy cow, like I've been doing this 4 months. I have no idea what I was doing for 10 years prior to this. How did I ever live like that before?
How did I ever not do this?
How did I ever not do this? Exactly. And it's so seeing that change into somebody, and now they're gym people. And even if that doesn't always mean like they're going to be the crazy gym bros or whatever, but they're like, now it's a priority for them. Or like, I got to make sure I get my workout in today because I know how important that is just for my overall well-being and makes me a better person. Right? Like I'm not a cranky old man and like, cause I'm hurting and I'm just grumpy and I haven't exercised at all. Like those kind of changes are so cool to see.
Well, the strength to conversion of athletics, that was like, I got to live that in college.
Yeah.
I didn't pick up more than a 2.5 until I was 19 years old.
I don't think you could.
Like
it
would have been my, not without a blown back. So that for me was huge. Because I went, and it's not like, oh, I started lifting and you noticed this drastic change in physique. It was just like stuff kind of tightened up. It helped me get a little bit faster, jump a little bit higher, all that stuff. But dude, not literally, that's one of my biggest things that I wish I would have got into earlier is just some kind of resistance training movement.
Yeah.
We basically just practiced. Like we did wrestling practice and then I did track practice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I did. I was never focused on strength training and the benefits and how that carries over to athletics so much. So when I finally started, when I got to college, my freshman year of college, I got cut from U of M, but that was the first year that I lifted ever. Because, some of my buddies were on the team and I was like, well, I need to work out anyway if I'm going to, try this next year again. So I started lifting for the first time. And then all of a sudden, dude, you can physically, especially because I was in that never lifted to 6 to 9 months, dude, that looked way different to me. I was still like 160 pounds, but it was a different 160 than 143.
Right. It wasn't a squishy 160.
Yeah. It wasn't like, oh man, don't want to turn sideways in the mirror too much because that's not good to look at.
Like this guy is a college athlete. Are you sure?
Wait, he's not on the team, right? He's just like the water guy.
He's the manager.
So I think that and we can touch on this too, because this is what I lifted one time when I was a freshman in high school. I went into the weight room and I just got harassed out of there because I think I was 98 pounds when I walked in as a freshman, or 94 or something like that, 4'11", walking into a high school gym as a freshman in college or a freshman in high school. So I walked in there and I've got the back bar and I've got like 130 pounds, which is like double my weight almost. And I'm like yanking as hard as I can, trying to pull this thing down. And I turn over and they're just like, are you serious? And I was like, I'm never coming in here again. That settles it. And I literally did not walk into a weight room for like 4 more years. So had I been plugged into someone like you, that's like, dude, first of all, relax. Like we're not trying to hurt ourselves today. Let's get maybe like a 20-pound KB, do some lunges. We can just walk and do some lunges.
Or just learn how to do all of the things. Like that's the learning of movements themselves. There's a learning curve. Like you can't, and that's one of the things that burns people out is they'll go in and not, and it's more like an ignorance. It's not like they're purposefully doing things wrong. Like people go in and just don't know what they don't know. And so when it comes to movement or competency, like loading weight when your body's not ready for it, is dangerous because you can injure the bejesus out of yourself, right? But you're not actually getting the effect that you want when you're not doing the movements how you need to be doing them. And like just walking in, and dude, every freshman ever will walk in and just assume they know how to do stuff. Because when you're 16, it's like, of course I know how to do this. I know everything.
Obviously, I've seen a video. Let me in here.
I watched Ronnie Coleman videos for 3 hours before I walked in today. I know exactly what I'm doing. And so, but you go in and you try to do things that you're not sure of, right? And you load them too heavy and you get pinned under a bar and you are a little bit humiliated by it, right? But what that's actually doing from a movement perspective is you have to teach your brain how to move in certain positions, right? And like, that's where a lot of people don't have that at the beginning, like especially in small town high school athletics, right? Because 98% of the coaches who coach in the weight room are like teachers, like math teachers who are also a baseball coach. Like they're not strength and conditioning guys, right?
Yep.
So they are just as ignorant to a lot of this stuff as the freshmen that walk in and don't know anything, but they just have to be in there and be in charge and make sure nobody gets killed in the weight room, right? So like, and that's just how it is. Like, it's one of the bummers of the whole industry that there isn't a strength and conditioning person. And there is, like, in bigger schools, and like there are schools that I know, even down in the South, I have a lot of friends that are in the South, like Mississippi, Tennessee area, where the high school football is massive, and they're not even big schools. Like they're probably as big as like Laurel, right? But they've got a dude who's like the strength and conditioning guy, because high school football is like is it in that part of the country. And so they're like, no, we have dudes going from here to Alabama. Like we have to get them ready to go, like to be a part of the SEC and then become pros. Like that's just how it is down there. So it's, having that plugged in earlier, and just having some form of guidance from somebody in person that can see you move, like would have been a game changer for even myself too at that time. Cause I didn't, even in high school, I was just kind of strong, and I figured it out a lot of wrong ways to do it. And then just kind of got better because I had no other option.
Yeah, we basically had opposite experiences of that. I never just was strong, still not something that's really caught up to that part of my life. I like the slowdown. It equates the same thing as running to me. When like for me, because I don't, let's not pretend like I could watch someone lift and be like, I mean, big stuff like the guy that's doing squats and just like all bent over, like, hey, maybe try not to do that. Probably it doesn't look like it's good for your spine. Right. But running, if you watch somebody run, dude, you can tell right away that they have no idea how to run. Like, where's your heels at? Where's your shin alignment? Like, you can see all that posture stuff, which is the same for you now. But dude, can you imagine if you could just have basic strength training for like young adults or young athletes that are like trying to slowly, gradually get better, instead of, hey, I'm going to put this beeper on your thigh. If you don't hit 90 degrees on this squat, you're out. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen those things, but that was big at our school. They were like, got to go to the ground.
Like powerlifting judging happening in the high school.
I am
room.
94 pounds. How about we just like see if I can even do a 90-degree squat? Right. Because
with zero
I can't touch
weight.
my shins. I got no flexibility. So that part I think would be, to your point, like the Texas football, and I know it's not all have to be that big, but in, Jerome, it doesn't sound like it was an exception. Laurel, hopefully they're not listening to this. Certainly not an exception. I wouldn't say that I got a lot of good strength advice, from the all around coach. They're just like, hey, you just got to come in and, move the stuff around until you get larger. I don't understand why you're so
read the
weak.
workout on the wall and go. Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't you see the diagram of how you're supposed to do the exact movement? Right. Now, see ya.
Yeah, exactly. And you're starting to see it luckily, like in the last, decade or so, a lot more of these like youth training things are popping up and teaching that. But even for adults, like that's the reason I loved and still do love working with complete newbies, because it's so easy. And I say easy, it's easy to see good results. Like the gap of like 0 to 100 happens much quicker when you are at 0 than the gap from 98 to 100. Right. Yeah. So like somebody who's brand new, like will see unreal results in 3 months if they're just consistent. And then the person who's been training for years, it's like, we got to really get dialed in if we're going to make 1% change here. And that can get like somebody, that's a certain mindset of person, like they got to be already kind of dialed in to get to that point. But that's why I love being able to be around and help people get that huge chunk of like first time results that gets them motivated to continue to want to do it and make it like a part of their regular life. Because that's the stuff that's actually going to change lives. It's like get them to understand why it's important, how good they feel afterwards, and then make them want to do it forever.
Well, this is the stuff, and we, I could probably go down this anger rabbit hole about what social media has done to the majority of like the up and coming fitness industry, because it's literally such a head fake. And people that are going from, hey, I don't want to go to a gym because I don't want people to see me like this. Like, and all they're seeing is 6'4", 265 pounds, 4% body fat, quote unquote, all natural. Like that, it's so frustrating because I feel like that's something that resonates with me, dude. When I'm 4'11" and 94 pounds, and all I see is every single person that's doing well in fitness looks like Arnold or Ronnie Coleman, or, you know, all these other guys. Thankfully, those guys have been pretty open about like, hey, just so you know, Ronnie Coleman had crazy good genetics before he started using. But if you think that you're going to ever look like that under any circumstance, unless you've got 35 years of just straight discipline, eating habits, exercise, you never miss your cardio. I don't know if you're big counting the macros guy. Apparently that's some kind of a big deal. I don't understand any of that stuff, to be honest with you. But
well, let's not even take the two like most notable bodybuilders of all time. Like those are the two extreme examples, right? Like most people obviously are never going to get to that, right? And Arnold has even said that. Like that's one of my favorite clips ever of when Arnold was training at Gold's Beach back in the early 70s, and he was doing like one of his just like little poses on the beach in the middle of the day, and there's like crowds of people watching. And this like little group of people, a couple guys came up and like, oh, why would you do this to yourself? Like we like to train, but we never want to look like you. And he looks him right in the eye and he goes, well, don't worry, you never will. And it's like just the most gangster comeback ever, because it doesn't matter how hard you train or whatever you do. You're literally never going to look like him because you're not him. Right. But those are the two extreme examples. Look at just what floods regular social media with all the gym people accounts, right? Like the fitness influencers that are in really good shape, and they're not honest about what they're using to even get to that. And they're not even remotely as like giant or big as those two extreme examples that we listed, right? Like they look like they're really fit. They kind of got like the superhero build, right? And even them, like I would say at the minimum, half of them are using some sort of substance. Like, and that's the absolute floor is half, right?
Yep.
And so it's this terrible comparison game that we play scrolling through Instagram, and that's all that happens is you end up seeing this. And you're like, oh man, that's a bummer. I don't look like that. Like this guy actually goes to my gym. I definitely don't want to go in there when he's in there, right? And that's like it's the opposite of what the gym environment should be. Like we should be pumped when those people come in who are like kind of nervous, and like be willing to be like, hey, do you need help with something? Like, I know you've just started coming this week. Like, what can we help with? And that usually just falls to like the training staff, or sometimes there's like a really nice like front desk person that can help them out. But very rarely are there people in a gym that are that supportive. And that's why I think CrossFit exploded, is that community environment of people like walking in and then they're doing workouts, and the person who is finishing last, like everybody stops and like cheers and claps for that person who's finishing at the end of the workout to like push them along, you know? And that's why that community aspect is so huge, and it exploded in that way. But like in the just traditional, like 24-hour fitness Golds type of environment, it can feel super lonely, because you literally go in there and everybody's got headphones on and hoods, and they're just grinding and grunting, and nobody's giving a rip about what you're doing. And that can like be helpful if they're not looking at you, and can also be like detrimental.
Well, and I think that's a huge swing would be the difference between that level of like fit human beings and just like being consistent in some form of exercise.
Anything,
you know, that's where people get lost so much is, dude, just having some kind of elementary movement on a daily consistent basis until you can do more. That, dude, we'll run through this really quick, because that is the hardest thing about if you take time off or away. Dude, when you have that first session back, you're like, I'm going to just cripple myself basically. And so you go to extreme exhaustion, and then you're 4 or 5 days where you're just in like all this body pain, and you're like, well, I'll have to take a few days off because I get up in the morning and I'm not mobile. So easing your way into like, hey, let's just do like 3 sets of 10 for a few exercises, maybe a couple crunches, maybe let's walk on the tread for 10 minutes, and then we can see how we feel the next day. This overexertion, especially I see it a lot with ex-athletes, because there's a lot of guys that I'll notice, especially because we just came through the new year, that you know, that first couple of weeks, dude, they'll show up Monday and then they're like back in there on Thursday, like, I'm
What
like,
did I do?
you can tell that he just murdered himself on that Monday because he's like super excited, and then you get overexcited, overexert, and then you get hurt.
Yeah, it's really funny, the concept of, if I'm not completely wrecked at the end of the workout, I didn't actually do anything, is super harmful. Not in like the necessarily physical sense where it's harmful. It can be if they're super like over the top into it, but just from a mental standpoint, because it's the physical version of yo-yo dieting, right? Like, I'm going to do this for a week and a half. And it's like, I don't really like this anymore. I'm going to drop off and try something else. And like, this program looks fun over here. It's totally different. And you're just like bouncing around for 2 weeks. But this idea that if I don't just if I'm not writhing in a pool of my own sweat and blood on the floor after workout, I didn't do anything, is not remotely true at all. Like, I used to say all the time when I was coaching like the group classes or whatever, and people would be like, oh, I just didn't feel like I got a good workout. Like, I only sweated a little bit. Like, if all you want is a good workout, like, we can just set the timer for 40 minutes and you can just do burpees the entire time. You'll be tired. Like, that's going to wreck you. That's not going to make you better. Right. Like, or the one that was one of my kind of mentor coaches used to say all the time, he's like, if all you guys want is a workout, then I'll put you in a room with a monkey and a baseball bat and you'll get a good workout in. Like, good luck.
Yep.
But that's not going to improve what you're looking to improve or make you better in the ways that are sustainable. Right. So I mean, and it's good that there's like that heightened motivation to like get in and want to get after it. And I'm not trying to temper that, but we have to understand, like, we're playing the long game, like decades from now. We're not trying to get everything we ever want out of fitness in 30 days. Right. Because that's what a lot of people come in. It's like, oh, I'm on this 30-day challenge and I've got all these things that I'm doing. And it's like, I'm going to reach all my goals in 30 days because the picture of the before and afters on the website, which was actually 2 different people completely that they made look like it was one person going through a transformation. Like, they told me I could do this in 30 days and I'll be happy if I reach that in 30 days. It sets these totally unrealistic things in front of them. They're very short-sighted in the approach. And then when it doesn't happen right away, they get discouraged and they're like, okay, well, I guess this isn't for me then. Right. Then rather than taking, if I'm going to be strong and fit and healthy and can do things with my family when I'm 80, what do I need to be doing now so that I can be that when I'm 80? Right. And that changes your mind on how you think about how you approach things day to day. Like, am I going to completely destroy myself every single day in a workout? No, because I won't make it to 50 walking well. Right. Like, if that, like, you got to think, what are the things that are going to take me to being strong and healthy 50 years from now?
Well, and I like especially with the food stuff, dude, making subtle adjustments gradually over time. One of my good buddies, he's just naturally like a bigger fella.
Yeah.
And, obviously not overwhelmingly controlled around food, similar to myself. I just have different genetic makeup. So, one day we like go into work and he just brings in like a half-gallon bag full of broccoli to eat for the day. And I was like, dude, this is going to last 40 minutes because it's plain dry broccoli. You're used to having 2 breakfast burritos for breakfast. This is not going to work. Like, just take out some small stuff over time.
180 on day one.
Yeah. Like, you think I'm going to change what I've been doing my entire life overnight? I would never be able to do that because I've like pretended to for like one meal. And I'm like, no, it's really not that important to me to look like that. So I'm going to go back to doing whatever I want.
Yeah.
But overdoing it is horrible on both sides, exercise and food.
Well, and that's the thing that people get discouraged about the most is they will think that they don't have the thought that it took me 20 years to get to this place where I look and feel like this. I can clearly erase all that in a couple of weeks. Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's the mindset though. I mean, then that's like actually how people think about it. And so they do a complete 180 on day one. They throw everything out of their kitchen that they've always ever eaten. And sometimes that's not like bad advice, honestly, because there's a lot of junk in people's kitchens. But like, when you try to be like, I'm going I'm gonna follow this meal plan tomorrow. I'm gonna wake up at 5. I'm gonna journal for 10 minutes. I'm gonna get my workout in. I'm gonna take an ice bath. I'm gonna do like I've like now all of a sudden I've got 20 things I have to do tomorrow that I told myself I'm gonna do. And then when you only do 2 of them, you're ticked because there was 18 that you didn't do, right? Rather than be like, I did 2 things today I never do, and that's awesome. Like I'm gonna be pumped about that, and I'm gonna do those 2 things again the next day. We get into this mindset, we're like, oh, freak. Like there was 18 things on this list I never even wanted to do today. So I must have failed. Like this program must not work for me, right? I'm 2 days in. But if we actually change how we look at that and be like, dude, you woke up early and you ate a good breakfast, like you never do either of those things. Like, let's be pumped about those things and build on that momentum and keep doing that rather than being ticked that you didn't do these other things that you were never going to do anyways.
Ever. No. Like it's the sleep thing is big for me because I've been a fairly early person most of my life. I mean, I've kind of always just got up a little bit earlier, it seems like, than, your average person maybe enjoys to. And I'll have the same conversation where, hey, I've been getting up at 8:30 for 15 years. You're not getting up at 4:00 tomorrow and going to survive the afternoon. I can promise. Like,
and if you do, you're not going to do it the second day.
No, because you feel horrible.
Yeah.
So I started trimming off, like 30 minutes to an hour of sleep at a time for like a week at a time until I got back. So now I'm if I have to get up at 3:58, which is pretty consistent on that every single day, I'm so comfortable doing that.
3:58?
And 3:58.
Do you do that on purpose with the weird, like?
Yeah, I want my extra 2 minutes on all the 4:00 guys. That's my little psychology on all those lazy guys sleeping until 4.
As long as there's a reason and it's not some weird like
why.
OCD thing that you have.
No, that's why it's 3:58.
Okay.
But that, that's important to me because, now I'm comfortable. And if I have a hard where like, oh man, I had a hard time getting out of bed till like 4:30, dude, for 1 week, I will get up at 3:30 every day for 1 whole week. And then by the time I get a sleep back in till 3:58, it's easier for me to do. So I just shell shock my body for a week and kind of do a reset. So then that extra, 28 minutes of sleep, I'm like, oh, I feel so much more rested.
I feel like $1 million.
3:58 in the morning. Yeah. So, you can do different versions of the shell shock on your sleep cycles, but dude, the morning stuff is when I think it's, for me and my schedule, it's the most peaceful time of my whole day. It allows me to get up, drink the water. If you want to, like, I'm not very good at like reading books necessarily all the time. So I listen to stuff instead, easier for me. Attention span problems. So I like to, 23-minute drive to the gym in the morning for me, 23 minutes there and back. I get to listen to something, whatever I'm aiming at every single day, but that's part of my rhythm and routine now. So building that up, it was really hard for me to get up at that, just sub 4:00 mark for a little while until I got accustomed to it, but I didn't start like that overnight either.
Yeah. And that's the thing that's important for people to look at when they see these people that they're trying to, or that they end up comparing themselves or they're trying to work towards, is this person, yes, they look like this and they share this stuff, or they have this kind of schedule, they're this disciplined, but that didn't happen overnight either. Like you can't just all of a sudden take on Chris Hemsworth, like his daily schedule and be like, well, I'm going to look like Chris Hemsworth. I do all the things he does. Right. Okay. Well, he's been training since he was 13 years old before he was hired to look like Thor. And then when you throw $20 million at him to look like a superhero, he's going to do what it takes to look like a superhero. Right. So, but that's there's this like some sort of screen that people don't see that stuff. Like it like filters out. They're like, oh, well, yeah, I guess he has been really good. And he's super disciplined, by the way. Chris Hemsworth is like unreal disciplined with his body anyways. Like he isn't one of these guys that kind of like, I don't know if it's even a fair comparison, but just if we're talking about movie star guys and superhero guys, like Hemsworth always looks like Thor now, right? Like he just carries that around with him. Jason Momoa will look like Aquaman and then look like a beach bum in between Aquaman movies. Like he has his cycles where he's like, nah, man, I'm just going to go surf and do all this stuff and have fun. And I'll look kind of fit, but I'm a little squishy in between movies. But Hemsworth like all the time looks like Thor. And that's because of how disciplined he is. And so that is developed over years and decades. It's not developed in even 6 months. And so that's why, like, when we focus on goals and we focus on habits and stuff, I put such an emphasis on, we have to be thinking about the long game in terms of decades, like I mentioned earlier, because we're trying to do this for life. It's not like there's this end point in fitness where, like, all of a sudden you hit this whatever metric that you want to use, and then somebody's like, you have achieved fitness, you are done.
And it just stays.
And you never have to do anything again, and it will just stick around forever. Like, that is not possible, doesn't exist. You always have to be doing something. And so I think most people don't understand that. They're just like, I just need to lose 20 pounds. Once I lose 20 pounds, it'll never come back. And I'm like, well, that is pretty much the opposite of what happens, if you believe that. So
if you're curious about firsthand experience, I can assure you that's not how it works.
Right. So let's look at this from a incremental stacking of habits every day. And then in 6 months, you're like a totally different person anyways. So, like, just continue that momentum.
Well, Ross, I like all the, kind of the stuff that we got to discuss. I probably got, like, I feel like we got a couple of hours of untapped, so we'll have to reload for another round. Consistency, discipline over time, not overshooting your goals or trying to collapse timeframes too much. Now, you can definitely collapse, long-term timeframes by having better workouts, more consistent, a little bit cleaner on what you eat, etc. Or just in, like, your business in general, hyper focus for a small window of time. You can definitely get ahead and collapse some timeline stuff, but dude, you've done a good job at, marketing yourself, being real and honest with people. Like, this is the expectation. This is why we're doing these workouts, having adaptable stuff that everybody can do. Again, from, hey, I've honestly never worked out in my entire life, to, like, hey, I was an ex-college athlete, but I need some help getting back on track here. You're able to manufacture a little something for everybody, which is why I've kind of enjoyed, being a part of your program for the last couple of years. So I appreciate you taking a little time out to jump on and just kind of, like, have a open discussion about it. It's been sweet.